Would you like to learn how to make the super active sourdough starter from scratch? Stay watching this video. Guten Morgen everyone, and welcome to another baking video. Today we won't be baking, but we'll be making the main ingredient that you use for baking.
Say what?
I know that in this channel there are many videos about sourdough bread, sourdough pizza, and sourdough. But it's okay, today we'll be making the sourdough starter from scratch. And maybe you already know about it, but you have some doubts, or maybe you're a new subscriber too. But what is a sourdough starter? So sourdough starter, also called levain, is yeast. Not the commercial yeast that you buy at the supermarket. Instead, it's a yeast that we'll make by our own. A homemade yeast, a natural yeast, an artisan yeast. So this kind of yeast is really old. It's the yeast that the humanity have been using since the beginning of the time. The history says that maybe it was the Egyptians the one who first discovered by accident this yeast. It happened in an Egyptian bakery where a baker left some dough forgotten somewhere there, and then he reused it in a new bread. And then they discovered that the bread could be more soft, more tender, and more tasty too. And since then we've been using this kind of yeast until 100 years ago, when the commercial yeast appeared, known as Saccharomyces cerevisiae. And the bakers found out that this commercial yeast was faster. And as you know, time is money, so they use it to make faster fermentation, faster bakings, and faster sellings, but they forgot the taste. So now I come again with the sourdough starter to bake tasty bread. The first thing is that we're going to give more time for the yeast to digest all the starches that are in the flour. And when I'm talking about starches, I'm talking about sugar, which is not the best ingredient of the bread. So they will pre-digest the bread for us, and then when we eat it, we won't have to do that much work. And another thing, and healthy thing about sourdough bread, is that we'll be using just 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt, which is totally different when you buy bread at the supermarket. Have you ever read all the ingredients that you have in there? Think about it. Okay, you convinced me. How do I make a sourdough starter? This is really easy, and we need these few ingredients. Bread flour. But we can also use whole wheat flour. Water, a little jar, and a spoon. And the best part of this recipe is that we're going to do everything by the eye. No measurements, no volumes, nothing at all, just by the eye. In a jar we put 2 spoons of flour. Now we add some water and we start mixing. We're looking for a stiff dough. It doesn't have to be that liquid. If it's too liquid, then we can add some more flour. And if it's too stiff, we can add more water. This is the texture that we're looking for. It's like a mousse. So what is going on now in this project of sourdough starter? Well, what we're doing is fermentation. Yes, we're using the nature to ferment this flour in our own benefit. The key to have a healthy sourdough starter is to feed it. But why are we feeding the sourdough starter? Because it's alive. The thing is that in the flour, but not only in the flour, also in the jar, in the spoon, in my hands, and in the air, there are microbacteria. So don't worry, they've been around us since the beginning of the times. So in this starter we have 2 sides. On one hand we have the yeast, this natural yeast, and on the other side we have the lactobacteria. And we need them to get along together, to work together for our own benefit. And how are we going to do this? By feeding and giving them the right temperature. And feeding with what? With flour. Remember that in the flour are the starches, the sugars. So they will be feeding from these starches and making some CO2, which is gases, and also some waste. The yeast will produce alcohol. and the lactobacteria will produce acid, which is the main characteristic of this sourdough starter. And the thing is that any of them like the waste that produces the others. So the yeast doesn't like the acid, and the lactobacteria doesn't like the alcohol. And we need them to work together. And as I said, we need to feed them, and then we also need to give them the right temperature. The right temperature should be room temperature, which is around 77 degrees Fahrenheit. I know that maybe you are in a cold weather right now or in a warm weather. Then you need to find out how to reach this temperature, which is the key, really important for succeeding in a sourdough starter. So that's all for today. What we're going to do now is to leave it here at room temperature until tomorrow. Are you lost with all the sourdough bread recipes that you find on the internet? Would you like to learn all the tips and tricks to make your own sourdough bread at home? Then I have the solution. I have designed the perfect masterclass of sourdough bread just made for you. By clicking the link on the description, you will learn how to make and take care of your sourdough starter, how to knead, shape, ferment, and bake your sourdough bread, how to use and read the baker's percentage, all the basic techniques to bake like a pro at home, and how to read and understand your dough. Don't miss out on it and click the link on the description right now. Guten Morgen everyone, and welcome to day 2. Yes, I know that I am dressed like yesterday, but don't worry. Let's check how is our sourdough starter project. So as you can see, there's not much activity, which is normal. So what do we have to do now? The same as yesterday. Feed it again with more flour and more water. Just like yesterday, we'll feed it with 2 spoons of bread flour. Now we add some water, always by the eye, remember that, and with the spoon we start mixing it. Always looking for this kind of texture. It's like a heavy cream. That was all for day number 2. As yesterday, we'll leave it again here at room temperature. 77 degrees Fahrenheit is the best temperature. And now, I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, I didn't know you were recording. I was having my breakfast. Good morning. So now we are at day 3. Let's check how is our project. I hope you have seen that. There is a little bubble there. That means that we are going good. We are going okay. There is some kind of fermentation going here. So what do we have to do now? The same as yesterday and the day before. Feeding it. Let's go with 2 spoons of flour. Now a little water. By the eye. Start mixing and looking for the same texture. If it's too stiff, add some more water. And if it's too hydrated, just add a little bit more flour. It is as simple as that. So that's all for day number 3. What do we have to do? Nothing. Wait until day 4. See you tomorrow again. Welcome to day 4 of this sourdough starter project. Yes, I know, but I have many black t-shirts. So now it's looking much better. There are many bubbles going on in that jar. We have a really good looking fermentation going on. So what do we have to do now? So at this point, what I recommend is to discard 1/3 of this mix. This will clean this sourdough starter, and then with a new refresh, will give it a lot of strength. So now we'll feed it with a little bit more flour. Yes, 3 spoons this time. And some more water. Remember that we're always doing this by the eye. And in this case, as you can see, I am adding a little bit more water because it was a little bit stiff. Now I have the right texture. Take a look. Perfect. Lid on. So now I don't want to spoil it, but I think that something's going to happen. So finally we have arrived to day number 5, and what you've seen was the magic of the fermentation. Yes, now we have a perfectly working and really active sourdough starter. So I think we should give her a big applause. It's okay with the confetti, but what do we do now? Should we feed the sourdough starter forever and end up with 200 kilograms of sourdough starter? I have the solution. Baking bread. You never thought about that. So how much sourdough starter do I use in a dough? The usual is to use 200 grams per kilo flour. That is 20% in baker's percentage. Remember that in this channel you have a video about that. And there is also my app, Gluten Morgan Baker's Percentage, which is free for download for iOS or Android. But if you're not going to bake bread every day like I do, you can put the sourdough starter in the fridge. That will retard, that will slow the fermentation, so you don't have to feed it every day. But when you want to bake bread again, remember to take it out of the fridge a few hours before and feed it and give it the right temperature, which should be around 77 degrees Fahrenheit. And before I end this video, I have 2 tips for you. To find out if your sourdough starter is active, I mean ready to be used, with the spoon pick up some sourdough starter and put it in a bowl with water. And if it floats, it means that it's full of air. That means that it's fully active and ready to bake bread. If it doesn't float, that means that it's not active. So what do you have to do? You have to feed it again, give them the right temperature, and wait till it double or triple in size. Tip number 2. This mysterious liquid that you're seeing, maybe it can happen at the beginning when we are building this sourdough starter. Or it can also happen when you forgot your sourdough starter in the fridge for a long time. This is really easy to fix, and what you have to do is to discard this liquid, 1/3 of the sourdough starter, and then, as usual, feed it again with more flour and water, looking always for that stiff texture. Now we're done. Now you have to leave it at room temperature and wait till it double or triple in size. So I hope you have enjoyed this video and learned something, or maybe refreshed some knowledge that you had already. And as usual, please leave me some comments, share it if you want, like it, and I'll see you on the next video. I hope you have enjoyed this video. And if you want to learn more about sourdough bread and sourdough starter, I encourage you to check the link on the description. And remember, this masterclass was especially designed for you.